How Wall Street turned your rent into a weapon. The pen clicks, the keys slide, and the realtor smiles. Fixed rate totally affordable, she says. 2 months later, the escrow shortage hits, homeowners' insurance surges, HOA fees re-benchmark, and the tax assessment leaps. The payment that fit becomes a trap that bites. Meanwhile, the raise was 3% before payroll deductions. Rent premiums, tuition, double-digit moves. The dream didn't vanish, it got repackaged and sold back with fees. One lever linked your rent, your loans, your medical bills, and turned households into yield. We'll name the policy, the date, the player. To see the trap, we go back to when money changed shape. The 122nd commitment, hook. Let me anchor this in the bills on your table. Your rent jumped at renewal, even though nothing in the unit changed except a market update. Your health plan premium crept up, your deductible doubled, and somehow the urgent care copay isn't what it was. Your student loan servicer emailed about an adjustment, which turned out to be capitalization and a higher minimum. 3 drains, same sensation. Housing, education, healthcare, financial products first, services second. The place to live becomes a rent stream optimized by software and pooled in funds. The degree becomes a government-backed lending pipeline with servicing contracts that profit from delays. The hospital bill becomes a revenue cycle project translated into codes with facility fees stapled on. Miss a payment and the loop tightens. Late fees, credit score drag, higher insurance quotes, fewer exits. Call to fix it and you're offered forbearance, a pause that grows the balance. Ask a landlord for relief and meet an algorithm. Ask the hospital for charity care and hit a maze. Here's the core claim. This extraction wasn't an accident. It was architected. There's a rule, a dry, technical one, that rewired who holds risk and who receives cash flow. It moved volatility off institutions and onto households, and it's been hiding in plain sight. We'll show receipts, memos, vote tallies, regulatory guidance, not vibes, signatures. You'll see how a handful of decisions let capital price your shelter, meter your education, and code your care. Why now? Rate whiplash froze roughly 3% pandemic-era mortgages in place, slashing listings and welding owners to loans they'll never see again. Affordability collapsed. By 2025, around 3/4 of households can't afford a median-priced new home, and teachers, nurses, and skilled trades workers on about $75,000 can only afford roughly 1 in 5 listings. Institutional buyers sit on dry powder while rent-setting software pushes renewals to target yields. Liquidity waves reshaped affordability overnight. We're stepping into the backstory that made today feel inevitable and shows where the leverage still lives. Gentle transition, orientation to the story world. To understand what happened, we follow the money through institutions, not slogans. We track who gets paid on what terms and with which protections. The cast isn't mysterious. Regulators and central bankers who set the rules and the rates. Wall Street desks that turn cash flows into tradable products. Universities that learn to treat tuition like priced inventory. Hospital systems and insurers that turned care into coded revenue. Private equity that scaled the playbook. We'll stack the why in layers. First, what happened? Houses became spreadsheets, classrooms became loan funnels, clinics became billing engines. Then who did it? The agencies that wrote the guidance, the committees that set tax treatment, the firms that built the software. Then why? A hunt for yield in a world of falling interest rates and a policy project to push risk off balance sheets. Finally, what nobody planned. The middle of the income distribution carrying volatility they can't hedge. Scope matters. We're covering roughly 40 years across 3 markets because the same move repeats. Take a human necessity, standardize it, finance it, and shift risk to the user. Meanwhile, wages slowed. Productivity gains didn't flow to paychecks, yet the price meter for essentials started sprinting. We'll show when it took off and what connected the curves. Ground rules for this series are simple. We'll only use verifiable facts. Studies, hearings, court filings, budget lines. We'll flag gray zones as theory, not truth. When we reconstruct a room, say a policy meeting, we'll use documented outcomes and contemporaneous accounts. No invented quotes, no inflated stats. You'll know what's solid and what's inference. Here's how we'll move. We'll open with housing. Securitization incentives that rewarded volume over verification, then the post-crisis sweep that turned foreclosures into rental platforms optimized by rent-setting software. We'll shift to higher ed. Federal lending expansion with little underwriting tied to future earnings, administrative growth, and servicer incentives that profit from deferments. Then healthcare. Employer-based coverage lock-in, rising deductibles, consolidation, and out-of-network traps that landed on your credit report. Threading through all three is one keystone rule, one lever that made households the buffer for shocks. While the headlines shouted bubbles and bailouts, the architecture quietly locked in. While that was happening, your options narrowed. Everything was about to change when money itself changed shape. Housing becomes a product, the turn. Start with a street that used to breathe on weekends. Kids on scooters, dads mowing, the smell of charcoal. Then the for sale signs multiplied, and after 2008 the signs didn't flip to sold, they sat. Foreclosures stacked up at county auctions. Families left with cardboard boxes, portfolios arrived with spreadsheets. To understand why, we need to go back to the moment mortgages stopped living at the bank. When loans became inputs, securitization became the factory. The mandate was volume. Originate to distribute meant the originator didn't hold the risk. Investors did through mortgage-backed securities. The 1980s and 1990s built the pipes. By the 2000s, incentives were humming, fees up front, performance later. What nobody knew at the time was how brittle the chain became when verification turned into a checkbox and ratings blessed stacks that hid fragility. Then the crash. Prices fell, credit evaporated, and a foreclosure wave rolled through neighborhoods that never imagined they'd anchor a financial strategy. That was the opening. Capital saw inventory cheap and concentrated. Private funds and real estate operating companies bulk bought foreclosed homes by the thousand. What used to be a local craft, one landlord, a handful of houses, scaled into an asset class. Single-family rentals got a ticker, term debt, and software. Here's where the culture shifted. Institutional landlords professionalized maintenance and collections, but they also standardized rent. The spreadsheet didn't care about your kid's school or grandma down the block. It cared about comps, renewal capture, and net operating income. Rent algorithms arrived quietly. Data flowed from property managers into pricing engines that recommended increases and flagged underperforming units. A tenant negotiated with a leasing agent. The agent negotiated with software. Meanwhile, zoning stayed tight. In many cities, rules limited new supply in the very neighborhoods where jobs grew. Scarcity hardened. Add rate shocks, mortgages leapt from 3% to 7%, and the ownership ladder pulled up. Existing owners with low rates locked in. Listings thinned. The floor under rents rose because the exit path by a starter home faded. In select metros, institutional investors own meaningful shares of single-family homes, double digits in some zips, and can bid fast with cash while families wait on underwriting. What this meant on the ground, a fee stack you couldn't see at the tour. Application fees, administrative fees, pet rent, valet trash, tech packages, smart lock subscriptions, each small, together material. The spreadsheet loved them because fees fall straight to income and don't anchor future rent caps. Tenants learned to do math that didn't exist 10 years prior, total monthly outlay before keys. In the aftermath, something else happened. Neighborhood knowledge, the stuff your old landlord held in his head, who's a good tenant who needs a week, got replaced by risk scores. Screening software scraped credit files and court records. One eviction filing, even dismissed, became a scarlet letter. The origin to distribute era's logic returned in miniature. Offload risk from the owner to the household and let the model decide. Parallel to this, build-to-rent subdivisions appeared where tract homes once sold to first-time buyers. The sign at the entrance said, "Now leasing." Corporate maintenance trucks replaced Little League banners. For families, the trade-off was clean and quick. Newer homes, predictable repair lines, but the terms were inflexible. A late rent charge after midnight. A renewal bump because the market moved. This was the moment everything changed. Private capital brought scale to a market built for local actors. With scale came pricing power, especially block by block. In select zip codes, institutional buyers accumulated meaningful shares. They could bid fast, waive inspections, and take properties that a teacher and a nurse couldn't close on in time. Suddenly, the comps reflected institutional strategy, not community budgets. Now drop in the rate cycle. A decade of cheap money inflated asset prices while wages lagged. Owners refinanced, extracted cash, upgraded kitchens, and set higher marks. Then rates snapped back. Sellers with 3% notes stayed put. Buyers faced high prices and high financing costs. The rental market absorbed the overflow, and software nudged rents to capture it. A micro story brings this home. Denise teaches 8th grade science. Her starter house was a 22-minute commute from school until her landlord sold to a fund during the post-crisis sweep. The new owner offered a renewal with a $275 monthly increase and a non-refundable amenity fee for the same cracked tennis court. Denise asked for a break. The agent checked the system. The system said no. She moved 60 miles out to find a rent she could cover, and now wakes at 5:10 a.m. The kids still call her Ms. D. She drinks coffee in a parking lot before first period because traffic runs tight. Impact rippled. School turnover rose because staff couldn't live nearby. Volunteer firehouses lost weekday coverage. Small businesses felt the lunch hour dip when commuters ate on the highway, not on Main Street. The spreadsheet didn't measure those costs, but households paid them. Here's the quiet link back to policy. Structures born to move mortgage risk off bank balance sheets birthed an investor toolkit, from REMIC tax treatment to securitization norms. After 2008, those same structures made it easy to finance bulk purchases of single-family homes and package rental cash flows. Debt markets matured around it. Rent became a bond-like stream, and rent-setting software, led by vendors that touched the vast majority of investment-grade multifamily, synchronized pricing power across markets. While that was happening, county boards wrestled with growth and said no more often than yes. Scarcity met scale, and the price meter kept ticking. Fees filled the gaps left by the end of the refinance era. Arbitration clauses in leases trimmed tenant recourse. If you wanted to push back, you needed a lawyer and time, two things that people working double shifts don't have. And still the human peace tugs. A home is shelter, stability, a school boundary, a neighbor who can grab your kid for 10 minutes. The moment housing turned into a product optimized for yield, those meanings didn't disappear, they just stopped setting the price. Student debt as a business model. While houses turned into spreadsheets, classroom seats did too. The promise was clean. Borrow now, earn more later, pay it back out of that bigger paycheck. But the machinery behind the brochure didn't run on diplomas. It ran on loan volume. Start at the federal spigot. In the 1990s and 2000s, Washington widened the pipe. Unsubsidized Stafford expansion, Parent Plus, then Grad Plus, introduced in 2006, with no hard borrowing cap tied to expected earnings and no traditional underwriting beyond basic credit checks for parents. Colleges learned the rhythm. If the aid formula left a gap, Plus could fill it. If tuition rose, loans chased it. On paper, access expanded. On the ground, a new revenue model took hold. Charge what the aid system will support. Meanwhile, campus budgets shifted. Administrative layers grew, compliance, marketing, student life, IT, fundraising, each hard to cut once added. Amenities became a recruiting tactic. Climbing walls and lazy rivers stood in for small class ratios. Price discrimination matured into an art form. Tuition rises with the sticker, then discounts back through merit that mostly sorts by ability to pay. The list price anchors perception, the net price floats. The loan terms looked flexible, but the flexibility had a catch. Income-driven plans limited monthly damage, yet interest that didn't get covered often got stored up. Deferments paused payments, not accrual. Forbearance became a button servicers loved because it kept accounts current on their dashboards and extended the clock. Capitalization turned unpaid interest into principal, and balances jumped. For graduate students, Grad Plus's uncapped borrowing, beyond cost of attendance, made it easy to overextend and hard to unwind when earnings lagged. Servicers weren't paid to optimize your outcome. They were paid to process. The fastest call script was the one that pushed a pause, not the one that built a repayment plan or checked eligibility for forgiveness paths. Each pause felt like relief. Each pause raised the hill you'd declimb later. Here's the stakes line that got lost in the paperwork. A degree used to be an elevator. Debt turned the elevator into a treadmill that speeds up if you stumble. Buying a home waited. Having a child waited. Launching a small business waited. Employers got a more pliant workforce because exits cost money and time borrowers didn't have. And yet the machine could claim success. Default rates fell for those who made it into income-driven plans. Portfolio performance looked stable because the government guaranteed the principal. Schools could point to graduation ceremonies and glossy outcomes pages that lumped high earners with median majors. The gap lived in the details. Which programs produced earnings that could carry the note, and which simply transferred risk onto 22-year-olds with no collateral and a FICO score that hadn't seen a mortgage yet. Let me ground this in one nurse's ledger. Maria borrowed $92,000 for an accelerated program after working nights as a CNA. She made payments for 8 years, sent in $38,000, then watched her balance climb anyway. A period of unemployment during a hospital merger pushed her into forbearance. Interest capitalized. When she called, the servicer offered another short-term pause. She took it because the rent was due. The letters kept using the word assistance. The numbers said something else. At the institutional level, incentives compounded. Schools that depended on tuition didn't face a hard budget constraint if they could recruit one more class with credit. Marketing firms specialized in lead generation. Some programs routed students through online portals with high-touch sales and low-touch advising. Graduation mattered less than enrollment because the check cleared its census date. When outcomes disappointed, the balance didn't go back. It followed the borrower. There was a public story about mobility and a private one about yield. Federal guarantees made the loans safe assets. Securitization turned future payments into bonds. Debt collectors and servicers carved out fees. Even without private securitization, the promise of federal repayment via income-driven plans or extended terms created predictable streams. You could be generous to the borrowers on headlines and still capture the cash flow. It just took longer. The kicker was structural. For grads, no aggregate cap on Grad Plus meant price could float to the aid ceiling rather than to earnings capacity. The loop closed when credit reports recorded the struggle. A late payment here, a delinquency there, and mortgage underwriting got harder. Auto insurance quotes rose. Landlords screening tenants saw risk scores drop. The price of being young and ambitious ran into the price of being a risk to other systems. The debt didn't just sit on a statement. It leaked into rent, transportation, and job choices. Meanwhile, not all degrees priced like their promises. Engineers exited to six-figure offers. Social workers, teachers, and nurses, jobs the community depends on, didn't. In states where public support fell, public universities backfilled with tuition. Private colleges with modest endowments leaned on list prices and discount games. The ladder of mobility stayed in place. The rungs spread farther apart. Here's where the policy lever shows its shadow. When Washington expanded lending without tying institutional eligibility to outcomes, it socialized loan issuance and privatized price setting. The risk that used to sit with banks moved to households and taxpayers, while campuses faced weak pressure to align program seats with labor market demand. Servicers, paid per account, weren't paid for borrower success. Small differences in rules created a big difference in behavior. And just like housing, software crept in. Financial aid models optimized yield of admitted students against discount rates. Debt dashboards nudged borrowers toward easy buttons that improved call center metrics. The language said counseling. The structure said throughput. The result wasn't an overnight crisis. It was a slow capture. A generation delayed milestones not because they lacked drive, but because their balance sheets absorbed volatility the system shed. The degree still mattered. The price extraction did too. And by the time households felt the weight, the contracts were standard, the terms were normal, and the payments were due. Healthcare coding pain into profit. The ER bill arrives like a letter from another planet. You thought a network meant a price. Instead, it's a code stack. CPT, ICD, modifiers, facility fee. Health is a necessity, but the bill is a strategy. Start with a lock-in. Most Americans get coverage through an employer. That sounds stable until you switch jobs or your company switches plans. Each change resets networks, deductibles, formularies. High-deductible plans spread because they lower premiums on paper, but they shift the first thousands of dollars of risk to the household. You become the insurer for January and February. The card in your wallet says covered. The calendar says pay first. Meanwhile, hospitals fused into systems. In city after city, independent facilities disappeared into regional networks. With consolidation came leverage. Negotiations with insurers stopped being one hospital versus one plan. It became the dominant system versus everyone. Rates rose in the shadow of fewer alternatives. Site of care logic flipped. A test that cost X in a clinic cost X plus a facility fee inside a hospital-owned outpatient building, even if the doctor and the machine stayed the same. Billing turned into a language ordinary people can't read. Charge masters, those giant list prices nobody actually pays, anchor negotiations. Discounts look generous against a fantasy number. The real action is in coding. Upcoding nudges a visit from moderate to high complexity. A stapled-on facility fee monetizes the room you sat in. Out-of-network isn't always a choice. In an in-network hospital, an anesthesiologist can be out-of-network, and the bill bounces to you unless protections kick in. Then came surprise billing reforms. The No Surprises Act aimed to shield patients from out-of-network ambushes and created arbitration to settle disputes between providers and plans. It worked at the front door. Fewer families got wrecked by a bill they never agreed to. But inside arbitration, large systems often prevailed. Providers have won a clear majority of independent dispute resolutions, pushing payment benchmarks higher than insurers' reference rates. Costs didn't vanish. They rerouted into premiums, deductibles, and employer plan designs. Pharmacy middlemen sat in the aisle between you and your medicine. Pharmacy benefit managers aggregated rebates from drug makers and promised plan savings. The price you pay at the counter often reflects a dance you can't see. List prices, negotiated rebates, spread pricing where the PBM pays a pharmacy one number and charges the plan another. Employers chasing budget predictability raised deductibles and coinsurance. The risk slid again to the household. Collections followed close behind. Medical debt is the leading source of collections entries on credit files. Even small balances spiral when a statement gets lost or a dispute drags. A dinged score raises auto insurance quotes. A landlord screening software flags risk. The bill for the broken ankle lingers in your apartment application. Let's walk through one day that detonated a family's balance sheet. Greg is a self-employed electrician with an ACA bronze plan. A routine hernia repair booked at an in-network hospital should have cost his deductible plus coinsurance. The surgeon was in-network. The facility was in-network. The anesthesiologist group, out-of-network through a contracted staffing company. The explanation of benefits landed with a second bill that dwarfed the first. Greg appealed. The hospital said, "We don't employ them." The anesthesiology group said, "We're entitled to our rate." The plan pointed to the arbitration portal. Months passed, phone time devoured work time. While the case ping-ponged, his credit took a hit. He missed a bid on a city job because his bonding insurer recalculated risk off that score. Zoom out and you see the same architecture as housing and education. Standardize the product, code the service, finance the receivable, push variability to the user. Revenue cycle management became a sector. Consultants reworked schedules, charge capture, denial management. Hospitals learned to meet margins with non-operating income during the cheap money decade. When those returns faded and labor costs climbed, pricing pressure moved to the bill. Employers tried to fight back with narrow networks, reference pricing, and on-site clinics. Some wins landed. But if the dominant system is the only cardiac center within 100 miles, the negotiation starts at their number. State laws tinkered at the edges. Some banned medical debt on credit reports, some expanded charity care screens, some nudged price transparency. Useful, but the core engine still runs. Here's where decisions taken far from exam rooms matter. When consolidation wasn't constrained, market power concentrated. When payment rules paid more inside hospital walls for identical care, site shifts accelerated. When arbitration leaned toward higher offers, the anchor rose. When PBM rebates normalized, list prices had room to climb and coinsurance rode the list. What nobody planned was the household arithmetic. A $6,000 deductible on a $64,000 income means one surprise empties a year's savings. The plan advises HSAs. The paycheck says maybe next month. Families triage care, PT later, specialist next quarter, skip the lab if the symptoms fade. Deferred care returns as bigger problems at higher cost. And still people do the human work. Case managers bend rules. Billing staff sneak you the charity care URL. Doctors waive a fee when they can. But the system they operate in pays for codes, not favors. You feel it when a nurse apologizes for a phone tree she can't fix. The pattern holds. Necessity meets finance, finance meets software, software meets a family. The bill that arrives doesn't just reflect care. It reflects a decade of mergers, a line in a federal rule, and a spreadsheet optimizing days in accounts receivable. The line item you're arguing about at your kitchen table is the downstream result of choices that turned pain into a product. The player, the date, the policy, the hidden lever. To name the lever, we go to an unglamorous corner of the rulebook where cash flows got new costumes. The date is October 22, 1986. The player is Congress, but the fingerprints include Treasury, the IRS, and the banking committees. The policy is the Tax Reform Act of 1986, and buried inside it is a structure with a friendly acronym, REMIC, Real Estate Mortgage Investment Conduit. Here's why that mattered. Before REMICs, bundling mortgages into bonds was clunky and tax awkward. After REMICs, it was tax efficient and modular. You could slice mortgage payments into tranches with different maturities and risks, sell them to different investors, and keep the pool itself from getting taxed as a corporation. One swap in the tax code turned a pile of home loans into a buffet line for global capital. That wasn't just an innovation, it was a permission slip. At the same time, securitization spread beyond mortgages, auto loans, credit cards, student loans, because the template traveled. The logic was identical: move loans into a trust, issue securities against the stream, pick up fees at each step, and keep the heavy credit risk somewhere downstream. Originators got paid up front. Servicers got paid to collect. Investors got tailored risk. Households got the variability. The memos from that era read like plumbing diagrams. They talk about pass-through treatment, investor classes, and prepayment risk. What they don't say out loud is the human consequence. Once mortgage and loan cash flows flowed cleanly through tax law, the incentive to originate shifted. Volume paid now, performance could wait. The originate-to-distribute model didn't start the fire, but REMICs gave it oxygen. REMICs also set a norm regulators would echo. If you can standardize and separate cash flows from the underlying human story, you can move risk quickly and capture fees safely. That norm crept into higher education when federal lending expanded. Parent Plus and Grad Plus loans, loosely underwritten, federally guaranteed, and for Grad Plus, effectively uncapped, didn't need private securitization to become assets. The guarantee itself made them bond-like. The Department of Education's servicer contracts focused on throughput, not borrower outcomes, because the government would be the buyer of last resort, one way or another. The keystone remained. The cash flow is sacrosanct. The human risk sits with the borrower. Healthcare wrote a cousin to this logic. Payment policy created site differentials. Consolidation made pricing power. Then revenue cycle management software turned claims into predictable receivables. Hospitals issued tax-exempt bonds against expected patient service revenue. PBMs built spread businesses on predictable plan flows. The arbitration mechanism in surprise billing reform kept the cash flow flowing, now triangulated by an arbitrator that in practice often sides with providers. Different sector, same move. Encode the stream, protect it in law, route variability to the user. If you want the receipts, follow the sequence. October 1986, REMICs become law, securitization scales with clean tax treatment. Late 1980s into the 1990s, mortgage-backed securities become the backbone of housing finance. Government-sponsored enterprises refine pipelines. 1990s and 2000s, asset-backed securities bloom. Student loans enter structured products. Federal guarantees crowd in. 2000s, originate to distribute dominates. Ratings bless structures. The crash reveals where risk actually sat. Post-2008, foreclosure inventory feeds single-family rental platforms. Rental cash flows get financed like bonds. Pricing software optimizes NOI. Meanwhile, education lending expansions, Parent Plus in the early 1980s, Grad Plus in 2006, widen borrower exposure with minimal earnings underwriting. Healthcare consolidates. Payment rules entrench site premiums. Receivables become financeable assets. Vote counts and guidance run through committee rooms and agency bulletins, not prime time. The House Ways and Means report pages on REMICs spell out intent. Facilitate mortgage markets, accommodate investor demand, avoid entity-level tax. The Office of the Controller of the Currency and Bank Regulators normalize securitization risk management. Education rulemakings codify servicer incentives and repayment options while preserving portfolio integrity. Health and Human Services and CMS rules define billing codes and reimbursement ladders. Arbitration rules set anchors. The impact isn't abstract. In housing, REMIC-era pipes let Wall Street return after the crash with new targets. Rent, not interest. In education, federal lending elasticity let institutions set price to aid rather than to earnings capacity. In healthcare, receivable-friendly policies let systems and vendors plan around cash that households would eventually deliver through premiums, deductibles, or collections. This was the hinge, a tax and regulatory architecture that exalted cash flows as tradable, financeable, and shielded, while households became the shock absorbers. That's the lever, that's the date. Those are the players. Once the door opened, capital sprinted through it. The private capital flood, scale meets scarcity. Once the door opened, capital didn't stroll in. It landed with pallets and scanners. Post-crisis, foreclosure maps looked like shopping lists. Funds raised vehicles with bland names and sharp targets lined up warehouse credit and bought in bulk. The trick wasn't finding houses, it was processing thousands at a time. Tech teams built dashboards that turned drywall and driveways into rows and columns. Crews rotated through zip codes like pit stops. Rentability within 30 days was a key metric. Net operating income, not neighborhood ties, set the tempo. Auctions felt different. Bidders wearing polos with fund logos showed up with certified checks and clickers. They could close sight unseen, carry renovation risk, and still pencil profit because the capital stacked below them was cheap and patient. After the initial sweep, the playbook expanded. Build-to-rent turned entire subdivisions into single-owner neighborhoods. You didn't bid against a couple with a pre-approval letter. You bid against a spreadsheet that showed 12% unlevered returns if renewal capture hit the model. Software made scale manageable and profitable. Pricing engines synthesized comps, seasonality, and occupancy targets into suggested renewals. If the building sat at 96%, the system nudged rates up because churn cost less than leaving money on the table. Vendors like RealPage came to touch the vast majority of investment-grade multifamily units, synchronizing rent moves across competitors. Package the extras and the model smiled. Pet rent, convenience, fees, tech bundles, renters' insurance add-ons. Arbitration clauses filtered into leases so disputes stayed out of court and in company-friendly channels. If a tenant balked, a standardized collections flow kicked in. The balance sheet appreciated predictability. While that was happening, the same investors walked into other lobbies. Private equity rolled up physician practices, urgent care networks, and ER staffing companies. The attraction wasn't bedside medicine. It was billing leverage and procurement scale. Revenue cycle vendors promised lower denials and faster cash. Meanwhile, in higher ed's shadow market, OPMs, online program managers, took tuition splits to recruit students and run digital classrooms. Everywhere the proposition matched, we bring capital, software, and process. You deliver cash flows. Layered fees became the house style. In apartments, application, admin, valet, trash, parking, pest control, amenity, month-to-month, and smart home. In clinics, facility fees on top of professional fees. In education, course fees, lab fees, technology fees. Each layer felt minor alone. Together, they thickened margins without spiking headline prices. The consumer saw a base number, the investor saw contribution margin. Scale met scarcity, and scarcity won on price. Tight zoning throttled new housing in job centers. Materials and labor bottlenecks dragged timelines. Interest rate snaps froze move-up sellers. The for-sale market pinched and rental demand rose. In that squeeze, rent software captured the delta between what people were paying and what they could be made to pay. The script rarely said gouge. It said optimize. There's a labor story buried here. As household costs climbed, bargaining power didn't keep pace. Employers watched applications from farther away because local workers couldn't afford the commute. Wage bumps lagged behind rent bumps. Unions inched forward in some sectors. Arbitration clauses and class action waivers blunted pressure in others. The spread between asset holders and wage earners widened, not because anyone wrote "widen" in a memo, but because the levers favored capital with patience and software with rules. A micro-story shows how the math felt to a single tenant. Isaiah leased a 2-bedroom in a garden complex. For 3 years, his payment rose in tidy increments. Then the owner changed hands. The new lease arrived with the same base rent and 5 new lines: $35 tech package, $25 valet trash, $15 pest control, $50 reserved parking, $18 convenience fee for paying online. He asked to opt out of valet trash. The agent smiled and said it's standard. He asked to pay by check. The portal charged the convenience fee anyway. On renewal, the software suggested a $180 increase. The agent said, "I can ask the manager." The system said no. In single-family rentals, the friction looked like maintenance SLAs that served investors, not families. Work orders triaged by central call centers prioritized code compliance and make-ready timelines over comfort. If the HVAC limped in August, a temporary fix might meet metrics even when a replacement would save winter energy bills. Turnover scheduling mattered more than the calendar of a third-grade science fair. Across town, an ER staffing company adjusted coverage to hit hourly cost targets, which raised physician workloads and lengthened waits. The bill didn't itemize that strain. It showed CPT codes and facility fees. The fund's quarterly letter highlighted revenue integrity and denial prevention. The arbitration clauses closed a loop. In leases, in medical billing disputes, in tuition refund fights, consumers lost the right to band together. Individual claims were small enough to abandon. Systemic issues stayed systemic. Investors modeled attrition and priced it in. Dry powder, unspent commitments, hovered like a storm cloud. With banks cautious, non-bank lenders stepped into commercial real estate, offering speed and flexibility at a premium. Maturities coming due met higher rates and lower valuations. Funds raised credit sidecars to finance the gap. The spread between what borrowers needed and what banks would do became its own product. Fees stacked there, too. All this sounds cold, but people inside these firms will tell you about professionalizing a mom-and-pop world. Fewer slumlords, faster repairs, safer buildings. Some of that's real. Scale can bring standards. It also brings distance. The maintenance supervisor who knew your kid's name now answers to a KPI dashboard where relationships don't fit. While the public argued culture, the model compounded. Monthly cash flows rolled, expenses shaved basis points, and rate hedges damped volatility. Earnings calls framed affordability headwinds as tailwinds for rental demand. Meanwhile, the household budget absorbed another nudge. But price spikes and fee stacks still miss one last twist. Over the past decade, money's shape changed, then changed back fast. That snap didn't just hurt borrowers, it rewired affordability overnight, froze owners in place, and forced capital to hunt yield in tighter corridors. The next part is about that throttle, the rate cycle, liquidity shocks, and the illusion of choice that appears when churn dies. Money's shape shift, rates, liquidity, illusion of choice. Think of money as the thermostat in the walls. You don't see it, but when someone cranks it, the whole house feels different. After 2008, the setting hovered near warm. Policy rates drifted toward zero, central banks bought bonds, and liquidity washed through balance sheets. Assets floated up, houses, equities, even those rent-linked vehicles. Debt felt cheap, risk felt distant. If you owned, you refinanced, millions locked near 3% mortgages. If you invested, you levered. If you built, you penciled with cap rates that assumed the thermostat stayed steady. Then the snap. Rates climbed quickly, not by a quarter here and there, but by whole percentage points in a season. The thermostat didn't nudge, it clicked hard. Mortgage rates leapt from 3s to 7s. That did two things at once. It priced new buyers out and welded existing owners into place. If you've got a 3% mortgage, you don't list unless you must. Supply thinned. Choice shrank. Transactions, the churn that lets prices reset, died down. Meanwhile, landlords saw the spillover. Households that would have bought stayed renters. Software read the pressure and pushed renewal capture. In markets where vacancies ticked up, the same systems used concessions and one-time perks rather than lowering headline rent. Your base rent held while you got 1 month free, which quietly resets next year's calculation. The model kept net operating income stable without flashing a discount on paper. Liquidity works like tide. When it's high, even mediocre boats float. When it recedes, lenders inspect hulls. Post-snap, banks tightened. Non-bank lenders stepped in with speed and price. Refinancing became a maze of higher coverage ratios and shorter fuses. Owners who'd lived on the refinance and extract rhythm watched that door close. To make up the gap, they turned to fees, subscriptions, and service monetization, any line item that could pad cash flow without requiring a new loan. Meanwhile, trillions in commercial real estate debt maturing over the next few years keep pressure high and dry powder waiting. The illusion of choice shows up in micro. You walk into an apartment tour and see 3 options. In reality, all 3 feed to the same pricing engine. A nudges you with a concession, B bundles fees, C caps your utilities and charges a green upgrade. The headline numbers differ, the net lands near the target yield. In mortgages, lenders advertise different points and rates, but the warehouse lines they draw from reprice together. You feel like you're deciding. The throttle decided first. Here's a kitchen table version. Jenna and Malik saved through the cheap money decade but were late to the party. In 2021, their pre-approval reached further than their comfort. They waited. By 2024, their budget bought less house at higher payment. Listings in their price band evaporated because owners with low rates didn't move. They could chase a new build miles out, where monthly HOA and infrastructure fees offset the base price, or stay renting and face algorithmic renewals. Neither felt like a real choice. Both were responses to a rate setting they didn't touch. Rates don't just hit borrowers, they rewire business plans. Developers watching financing costs climb shelved projects, which means fewer doors 2 years from now. Hospitals saw investment income weaken and moved to tighten operating margins. Universities that rode endowment gains now faced flatter returns and leaned harder on tuition and enrollment management. When money gets pricier, the sectors built on steady cash flows try to hold the stream by shifting more risk to the customer and freezing costs elsewhere. There's also a time lag that tricks people. Policy shifts land fast in markets with screens. They land slow in markets with drywall. Rents can adjust in months. Housing supply takes years. Student loan terms can change with a regulation. Degree pipelines take cohorts. Medical plan designs refresh annually. Consolidation takes a decade. That mismatch creates windows where extraction increases because alternatives aren't ready yet. The lock-in is real and measurable. Millions sit on mortgages no bank can replicate today. That's good for those households, but it also jams the whole housing ladder. Move-up sellers don't sell, first-time buyers don't buy, and rents don't face as much competition from for-sale options. Capital, seeing sticky occupancy and slow churn, treats affordability headwinds as support for rent growth. Quarterly letters say it plainly. What about relief when rates fall? Even modest cuts take time to loosen the weld. Owners still compare 3 to 5 end a quarter and hesitate. Refi waves now require larger drops to clear friction. If easing returns, demand may outrun supply again, lifting prices before monthly payments feel lighter. The thermostat can warm, but the rooms respond unevenly. So where's the agency? It lives in picking structures, not vendors. Fixed costs beat variable gimmicks. Transparent terms beat teaser perks. Paying down principal in lump sum windows matters more when refis aren't friendly. Negotiating total outlay, rent plus fees, matters more than base rent. In healthcare, choosing sites with site-neutral billing, when available, beats loyalty to logos. In education, deferring enrollment until aid packages and earnings odds align can save years of drag. But let's be honest, households can maneuver only within the walls they're in. Rate cycles are walls, liquidity waves are walls. The illusion is that personal optimization solves structural throttles. It buys time, it doesn't change the thermostat. The next levers, policy that reduces scarcity, rules that curb fee stacking, payment reforms that break site premiums, are how the room actually cools. Until then, the best a family can do is see the thermostat at work and avoid being the payout when it clicks again. Where leverage lives now. Action doesn't replace structure, but it moves numbers at the margin. And sometimes those margins are the difference between staying and being priced out. 4 levers show up again and again. Tenant unions, debt clinics, complaint-driven enforcement, and targeted policy hooks that collapse arbitrage. Start with the Phoenix win. A tenant council in a 240-unit complex used 3 moves at once. First, synchronized timing. They compared renewal dates, coordinated counters, and delivered a single letter covering 63 households. Algorithms expect individual churn. They do worse when faced with a block. Second, documentation. Residents compiled maintenance delays, fee changes not tied to services, and before-after screenshots of portal pricing. They attached city code references on habitability and fee disclosures. Third, external pressure. They filed a complaint with the city's housing department and copied the state attorney general's consumer division. The outcome wasn't a revolution, it was a revision. An advertised 18% increase landed at 6%, 3 junk fees were removed in writing, and late fee grace extended to 11.59 p.m. A win measured in rent line items, not headlines. Levers that travel. Tenant unions and associations. A building-level or portfolio-level group turns solo renewals into negotiations. Tactics that work. Shared Google Drives of leases and fee schedules, pre-drafted counter letters, and a rotating maintenance log that aggregates repair delays by unit number. Ask for transparent fee schedules, opt-outs for non-essential bundles, tech, valet trash, capped increases, CPI or a fixed percent, and a simple early termination clause tied to job loss or family care. Debt clinics and credit repair sprints. The price of everything else floats on your file. Community clinics run batch disputes for erroneous collections and obsolete medical debts, often clearing dozens of entries in a weekend. Targets. Medical collections now barred from some credit reports, duplicate trade lines from sold debts, and paid judgments that never updated. Result. Auto insurance quotes fall, landlord screening flags drop, mortgage pre-approvals improve. Complaint-driven enforcement. The boring portals bite. State attorneys general, CFPB, state insurance commissioners, and health department complaint desks trigger regulatory escalations inside firms. Those escalations route to higher-tier teams with authority to waive fees, reprocess claims, or override pricing errors. A clear, dated paper trail plus a filed complaint moves you out of the call center maze. Policy hooks that collapse arbitrage. Even without rewriting the economy, local and state rules can strip out the easiest skims. Site-neutral payments pay the same for identical care, whether in a clinic or hospital outpatient building, cutting facility fee arbitrage. Fee cap ordinances ban drip pricing in housing application. Admin, portal, convenience charges, unless the fee reflects a documented cost. By right, ADUs and small lot splits add supply where jobs already are, easing rent pressure at the margin. And it scales. A dozen buildings across a metro sharing renewal data can catch coordinated software moves and present collective counters. A citywide debt clinic weekend clears enough files that tenant screenings shift. A steady drum of complaints trains companies to settle sooner. None of this replaces the thermostat. It does keep the register from taking an extra dollar every time it opens. The playbook, how extraction hides in plain sight. To change outcomes, you have to see the moves before they land. The playbook isn't flashy. It hides in paperwork and timing. Start with watchwords that sound like convenience but price like leverage. Convenience fee for paying online on a portal the landlord requires. Dynamic pricing that floats rent renewals to hit a revenue target. Teaser perk that lowers month 1 and anchors month 12. Mandatory package for tech or trash that turns a $1 increase into a $20 add-on. Each fee is small. Together they beat you on the total. Now the timeline traps. Intro rates entice. Step-up surprise. Recasts reprice. Backloaded penalties wait for one mistake. A card at 0% with a transfer fee that becomes 24% on day 366. A tuition plan that's interest-free until a clerical error posts, then mushrooms with retroactive interest. A medical payment plan that reports to credit as a loan, not a bill if it's handled by a third party. The trap isn't the price, it's the time. Arbitration clauses are the keystone of silence. Buried in leases, hospital forms, tuition contracts, app signups. They remove your right to a jury, block class actions, and route disputes to a forum the company schedules and pays. Most people never file because the claim is too small, the process opaque, and time scarce. The playbook counts on attrition. It prices in the fact that you'll give up. Here is where dynamic matters. In housing, rent-setting software weighs occupancy, competitor prices, and churn costs. If the building is nearly full, the software nudges higher because losing a few tenants is cheaper than leaving money uncaptured. In healthcare, chargemaster differentials set anchor prices far above cost. Discounts look generous against fiction. In education, discount models optimize institutional yield by offering merit aid calibrated to what a family will accept, not what the program costs. The number you see is a behavioral guess, not a cost statement. Another page, recourse removal. Auto renewals you must cancel by phone during business hours. Opt-outs that require certified mail. Refund windows that start before the service delivers. In medical billing, appeal deadlines that run from the date printed, not the date received. In student loans, recertification dates that, if missed, capitalize interest. None of this is illegal. It's designed to win by fatigue. Parallel action, segmentation. The same product at 3 tiers, basic, standard, premium, where the needed feature sits 1 tier above your budget. The hospital facility fee makes the independent clinic suddenly basic. The apartment tech package gates Wi-Fi you already had. The university course fee unlocks software required for the class. The aim is to turn essentials into upsells. Pattern interrupts every 30 seconds. Here's one. A manager can override the rent engine. A hospital can apply charity care retroactively. A bursar can waive a late fee once per term. The playbook assumes you won't ask precisely enough. You build scripts. You ask, can you apply the manual exception? You escalate to billing integrity or retention. The human inside can still flex. Tease of what's coming. Choice architecture is half the game. Defaults decide outcomes. In pensions, auto-enroll raises savings. In debt, auto-enroll can lock you into the worst plan if you're not careful. Your aim is to pick defaults that serve you. In student loans, that's an income-driven plan with an interest subsidy over forbearance. In healthcare, it's a plan with predictable copays for known care over a brittle deductible gamble. In housing, it's a lease that fixes total outlay over a flash discount. Now the community angle. Tenant unions change a solo negotiation into a coordinated one. If 30 renewals come due, the algorithm expects a percentage to churn. A collective delivers a counter. Cap increases, remove junk fees, fix repairs. Debt clinics teach residents to dispute erroneous entries in batches, which moves FICO and reduces the price of everything else. Open pay networks let neighbors front a deductible interest-free and avoid collections. The hospital still gets paid. The credit file stays clean. Policy hides inside the playbook. Site-neutral payments in healthcare mean the same service gets the same rate, clinic or hospital collapsing a facility fee. By right density lets builders add units without discretionary hearings that invite delay. Fee caps ban drip pricing outside of cost. Outcome-based eligibility for loans ties institutional access to aid to graduate earnings, aligning seats with demand. You don't have to memorize the statutes. You watch for drafts that curb the tactics you've seen. Arbitration creep, dynamic price opacity, timeline booby traps. One more micro story. Leela, a social worker, faced a $190 rent bump and 3 new fees. She asked for the fee schedule, circled the add-ons not tied to a service, and offered a 1-year renewal with a $90 bump autopay and a no-fault early termination clause with 60 days notice. The manager said the system won't allow it. Leela said she'd like the written denial to share with the tenant union. The system allowed it. You won't win every time. The point is to create frictions where the playbook assumed none. Opt out when you can, document when you can't, and escalate when the portal runs out of buttons. Receipts, case studies that trace the flow. Proof, not vibes. We'll trace 3 places where the curve bent, and we'll pin each bend to the lever we named and the follow-on rules that protected the cash flow. Start with housing in a Sun Belt corridor. Call it the arc from suburban Atlanta to the northern edge of Tampa. Before 2012, single-family rentals were mostly mom and pop. After the foreclosure sweep, institutional ownership in select zip codes climbed into meaningful double-digit shares. County records show clusters where one parent company, scattered behind dozens of LLCs, held hundreds of doors. Rents didn't jump because someone raised a flag. They rose because a software tool, fed by near-full occupancy and tight zoning, nudged renewals. Meanwhile, inventory stayed scarce. Mortgage lock-in welded owners to their 3s, local boards slow-walked duplex and ADU permits, and new builds turned into build-to-rent. The break in the curve shows up on a simple chart. Same neighborhood, rent growth outpacing wage growth after institutional entry. Tie it back, the REMIC architecture made foreclosure to rental financing clean. Post-2008 debt markets underwrote rent like interest. Arbitration in leases kept disputes individualized and cheap to ignore. Shift to a Midwestern city with a flagship public university. In the late 199s, state appropriations began to slide as a share of campus budgets. By the mid-201s, administrative lines, compliance, marketing, IT, ate more of the pie and tuition filled the rest. The sticker soared, the discount game deepened, and federal lending expansions plugged the gap. Look at program-level numbers. Business and engineering grads cleared debt loads. Social work, education, and some health fields lagged wages to service ratios. Servicer logs from that period show heavy forbearance use, fast for call centers, brutal for compounding interest. The curve break is visible in cohort default data and balance trajectories. Balances flat or rising years into repayment for borrowers in lower-earning fields. The lever here is the federal spigot, Parent Plus and Grad Plus without earnings-based caps, paired with servicer incentives that privileged pauses over counseling. You can draw a line from Washington's eligibility rules to a bursar's office setting price to aid, not to expected earnings, and from there to a borrower's credit file that makes housing more expensive later. Now healthcare in a metro with 2 dominant systems. 20 years ago, an MRI at an independent clinic cost one number. Inside a hospital outpatient department, it cost that plus a facility fee. As acquisitions rolled, independent clinics thinned out. Claims data show the same CPT code fetching higher allowed amounts when billed under the hospital's tax ID. The No Surprises Act arrived and stopped the worst out-of-network ambushes, but the local IDR arbitration data skewed toward large providers' offers, lifting the payment anchor above median in network rates. Employers absorbed it in premiums. Families met it in deductibles and coinsurance. Credit files in the county filled with small-dollar medical collections, less now where reforms pulled them off reports, but the damage lingers where they remain. Trace it back. Site differential payment rules created arbitrage. Consolidation concentrated leverage. Revenue cycle software normalized receivables. Arbitration protected the stream. The curve break is a price line that decouples from input costs and moves with market power. Let's stitch receipts to people. In that Sun Belt tract, the teacher we met, Denise, wasn't alone. School HR logs tracked a spike in staff relocations beyond 40 miles as rent renewals outpaced raises. Small business sales tax receipts on Main Street slipped during weekday lunches because commuters ate on the highway. Meanwhile, investor presentations for the area highlighted favorable supply constraints and embedded growth. The language doesn't mention kids on scooters. The chart does, rent-to-income ratios breaching a third and climbing. At the Midwestern campus, the nursing program boomed to meet demand. Graduates like Maria entered a labor market that needed them and paid them on steps negotiated years earlier. Her balance rose not because she didn't pay, but because capitalization turned pauses into principal. The department's servicer scorecards rewarded call times, not long-form counseling. When her credit score dipped, her car insurance premium rose, and an apartment application faced a screening filter that flagged one late loan payment and a dismissed collection. The policy change shows up in her monthly bills, line by line. In the hospital town, Greg's hernia case became 5 hours of small claims prep. He won a partial reduction after the NSA shielded him, but the months of arbitration raised the plan's legal spend, which the insurer booked as admin and spread into next year's premium. His bonding insurer re-rated him mid-bid because the medical collection posted before it was reversed. One bill, 3 prices downstream. Tie each back to the lever. October 1986 made household cash flows clean commodities, mortgage interest streams in REMICs, federally guaranteed loan payments in education, patient service revenue in tax-exempt bonds and receivable financings. Later rules added glue, arbitration to keep disputes private, site premiums to justify higher hospital pricing, loan expansions to fund campus budgets without earnings checks. The receipts aren't theoretical. They're public records, budget lines, working papers, credit files, and renewal notices. You can follow the money from a committee report to a kitchen table. Now put it together. One system, many exits. Personal roadmap, navigating the next 24 months. You can't control the thermostat, but you can time your moves. Fix what you can fix. Choose clear, fixed terms over dynamic promises, negotiate total cost where you live, borrow only against realistic earnings, and get written itemized bills when you need care. The rest is structure, and we'll keep naming the levers shaping your bills. Housing, renting, and buying. Negotiate total outlay, not base rent. Ask for an itemized fee schedule and opt-outs for non-essential add-ons, tech, valet, trash, pest. Offer an earlier move-in date, auto-pay, or a longer term in exchange for removing fees or capping increases. Anchor to CPI or fixed caps. Propose renewal language. Annual increase not to exceed 3% or CPI-U, whichever is lower. Pair with a 24 to 26-month term to skip a renewal cycle. Use the manager override. Ask directly, can you apply the manual exception? Leasing teams often have limited override allotments per month. Early requests get them. Shop the same owner's portfolio. If one unit is firm, ask for lateral moves within the same company. Vacancies elsewhere may carry concessions the algorithm can't show at your property. Screen your own file first. Pull your reports, clean obsolete medical collections, and freeze secondary bureaus. CoreLogic, LexisNexis before you apply. Many tenant screenings pull from these databases. Buying in a high-rate window. Avoid teaser points that backfire at resale. If you must buy, target homes with fewer HOA, POA layers and predictable assessments. Ask for seller credits toward rate buy-downs only if the math beats a straight price reduction over your expected hold. Inspect fee-heavy new builds. Budget for infrastructure or capital recovery fees and ask for a written schedule of recurring assessments. If the builder requires their lender, demand a rate fee match or beat letter so you can shop. Landlord disputes. Repairs, document with timestamped photos, submit work orders in writing, and send certified mail after 7-10 business days if no response. Many states allow rent escrow when habitability defects persist after notice. Use it by the book. Fees, request legal citations for every fee. In cities with fee cap or disclosure rules, cite the ordinance and file a complaint if caps are exceeded or disclosures missing. Copy the complaint to the property's lender if you can identify it. Lenders dislike regulatory heat. Organize, start a tenant council email list or group chat by building. Share renewal dates, fee changes, and repair backlogs. Collective counters get manager attention. Escalations to corporate get the override. Education, borrowing and program choices. Price to earnings, not to aid. Use program-level earnings data where available. If a program's median earnings can't support the projected monthly payment under a standard or income-driven plan, defer or choose a lower-cost path. Aid stack hygiene. Prioritize grants and work study. Use subsidized Stafford before unsubsidized. Treat Parent Plus as a last resort. Keep amounts at or below what a parent can repay within 10 years on a fixed plan without jeopardizing retirement. Grad Plus discipline. Because it's effectively uncapped beyond cost of attendance, set your own cap tied to expected earnings. If debt to income at graduation would exceed 1 on a standard plan, reconsider the program or look for funded options. Avoid forbearance traps. If cash is tight, choose income-driven repayment with interest subsidies over forbearance. Request a backdated IDR start if paperwork delays were servicer caused. Put recertification dates on your calendar and set multiple reminders. Consolidation timing. Consolidate to access newer IDR plans or to reset delinquency clocks, but confirm you won't erase qualifying payments toward forgiveness. Ask the servicer to provide a payment count in writing before and after consolidation. School accountability. If a program underdelivers on job placement, use the school's written outcomes against them. Escalate to the State Higher Ed Board, the Department of Education's FSA Ombudsman, and the Attorney General's Consumer Division. Ask for tuition adjustments or institutional forbearance when placements lag promised timelines. Defer strategically. If an offer arrives with weak aid, ask for a one-term deferral and reapply with updated FA/FSA CSS to capture better need calculations. Compare net price, not list price. Healthcare plans, bills, and disputes. Pick predictable over brittle. If you expect known care, chronic conditions, upcoming procedures, favor plans with clear copays and lower deductibles over high deductible gambles. If you choose HDHPs, fund the HSA early in the year to cover January-February shocks. Shop sites of care. Ask if a service is billed as hospital outpatient or independent clinic and what the facility fee is. When possible, request site-neutral alternatives. For imaging, compare independent centers to hospital-owned locations. Pre-op confirmations. For scheduled procedures, demand written confirmation that all providers, surgeon, facility, anesthesia, pathology, are in network. If not, request an in-network exception or a written good faith estimate under the No Surprises Act. Scrub the EOB. Compare CPT codes to what was performed. Upcoding is common. If a code looks wrong, ask billing to refile with the accurate level. Keep a log of calls, names, and dates. Use legal shields. If you receive an out-of-network bill for emergency care or ancillary providers at an in-network facility, cite the No Surprises Act in writing, demand plan to provider arbitration, and inform both parties you will not pay disputed amounts during IDR. Charity care and payment plans. Ask for the hospital's charity policy and income thresholds. Many systems hide automatic eligibility. If you must set a plan, negotiate interest-free terms directly with the provider rather than third-party lenders that report as loans. Medical debt and your credit. If a paid medical collection remains on your report, dispute it with the bureaus and the furnisher, citing recent reporting changes. Keep disputes factual and attach proof of payment or settlement. Cross-cutting escalations. File complaints with teeth. CFPB for loan servicers and debt collectors. State AGs for housing fees and unfair practices, state insurance commissioners for health plans, HHS CMS portals for hospital billing issues. Use complaint numbers when you escalate with the company. Ask for back office teams by name. Regulatory complaints, executive resolution, and billing integrity teams have authority, frontline reps don't. Calm, dated timelines plus cited statutes get results. Freeze specialty bureaus. Beyond Equifax/Experian/TransUnion, freeze Innovis and specialty reports used for tenant screening and insurance before shopping. Unfreeze selectively. Community leverage. Start small. 2 buildings sharing renewal data is a start. A monthly tenant clinic in a library room cleans 10 credit files at a time. A neighborhood memo on hospital billing rights prevents 3 surprise collections. Small wins compound. Set expectations. You're not fixing the thermostat with these moves. You are lowering your bill this year, protecting your file for next year, and buying time until rules change. That's worth doing. Resolution and meaning. The middle class didn't fail. Its cash flows were standardized, securitized, and harvested, bill by bill, while risk slid to kitchen tables. If you want the names, the memos, and the exact lever, and how it still shapes your rent, your tuition, your medical bill, subscribe and stay with this series. Share this with someone choosing a home, a degree, or a surgery in the next year, and don't miss what's coming next.